Hi guys, I hope you're well. Um, so, building on yesterday's lesson, where we looked at uh, various approaches to genre and a bit of postmodern culture, as well as looking at some structuralist theory, in addition to some semiotic theory. So, this lesson we're going to be moving on to narrative. So, as I'm sure you all know, the term narrative is essentially another word for a story. And in films, um, there are lots of different types of narratives. And what we're going to do is cover two main approaches, one being a linear narrative and the other being a circular narrative or a non-linear narrative. So you can see some examples here. We have Pulp Fiction, Inception, and Anchorman, strangely enough. Um, and these films all have different narrative structures. So, a mainstream narrative is your classic Hollywood narrative, and somebody that wrote about linear narratives or mainstream narratives is Todorov. So Todorov came up with a theory for narratives which are very much used today in terms of like classic Hollywood films and films we see today. So, in terms of Todorov's idea of narrative theory, all films start with some type of equilibrium. So, this is when there's normality and calmness. This is reflected in the music, which is usually an artist's song to create a sense of normality. So, at the start of a Hollywood film, we usually see the characters, or we're introduced to the characters in their state of calmness, in their world, in their normalized world, if you like. And then at some point in the first third of the film, there will be some type of disruption. Disruption is caused when the zombies start to attack, for instance. The disruption and the resolution phases take up the bulk of the movies. So lots of Hollywood mainstream narratives use this technique. For instance, um, in the first third of a film, you would probably see, a teenage boy, Peter Parker, suddenly, wow, gets bitten by a spider, and then strange things start to happen. So there's always that type of disruption, and there's lots of different types of disruptions in accordance to genre. Um, there's lots of, you know, different vehicles for meaning, if you like, but essentially, lots of films, if they're following a mainstream narrative, they are the same. So after the disruption comes the resolution, and this is the part where the team find ways to kill the zombies, or you know, the main character finds a way to succeed. This is a goal that is weaved throughout the film and is eventually reached. Okay, and then that should say restored order. Okay, the zombies are either contained, dead, or under control. So the natural order of things are restored. Okay, I actually stole this from the internet, so that isn't actually my typo. But apologies anyway. And then after the zombies are under control, or the main antagonist, Darth Vader, has been defeated, a new equilibrium is created. So the example here is the film 28 Days Later, where there's a new order as the survivors migrate to a monitored area. The sequel to this film continues on from this equilibrium. So that is a mainstream narrative. So I'm sure you've all watched films and you can recognize these stages. Okay. And in terms of your case study, when you're writing about narrative, there's loads and loads and loads of films you could use which illustrate this theory. And in terms of your grades and so forth, the detail and the quality in which you apply Todorov's mainstream narrative theory will obviously um, determine, how successful you are in your assignment. So, circular narratives or secular narratives. These are narratives that start at the end and then explore the action up to that point. Sometimes it's only at the end of the film where it actually makes sense. So, Pulp Fiction is a good example of this. It's a complex narrative and is comprised of seemingly unrelated scenes that eventually come together to make sense at the end. So, if you haven't seen Pulp Fiction, I suggest you watch it. It's a Tarantino film, and it's um, it's a modern classic. So, about as close to a masterpiece as a film as you will get. So, um, and it's very weird. It's very strange. The script is incredible, and the way the scenes are stitched together and what's going on, we're left guessing throughout the film. And it's a very difficult sort of technique to really be successful at. And few films are good at portraying secular narratives. So Pulp Fiction would be an awesome idea there. Okay, you can use other examples. I'm sure you've all seen loads of films and you've all got lots of examples. But if you are struggling, watch Pulp Fiction. Okay, so moving on to develop our understanding of narrative a little bit further, we're going to look at character alignment. So, in most films, we're aligned with characters and encouraged to see the world through the perspective of the protagonist or otherwise the main character. So, in most films, we align with one group, with one individual. We are aligned and encouraged to see the world from their perspective. In some cases, alignment changes and shifts throughout a film. And a good example here is Inception, where we're mostly aligned with the character Cobb. However, in this scene, we are aligned with the character Ariadne in order to understand how the film works. So watch the scene and think, why is this scene important in order to understand the rest of the film? So if you've not seen Inception, it's a really good film and another one I would encourage you to watch, and a really interesting one in terms of character alignment. So what we're going to watch is an extract from the cafe scene. Now you can watch this in its entirety, and we'll discuss it after. Okay, so I'm sure you'll agree, pretty impressive stuff. So the two characters, Ariadne, who is the lady on the left, and Cobb, who is Leonardo DiCaprio, the character on the right, are the two main characters of the film. But no doubt, the leading character is Leonardo DiCaprio, who is the character Cobb, and we are encouraged to align with Cobb for 90% of the film, and we experience his world, and we are aligned with the challenges that he faces and the motivations that he has. However, in this cafe scene, um, we are aligned with Ariadne. So, what you need to think about is at that point of the film, why are we aligned with Ariadne? Okay, um, to which there are a number of reasons. And Inception is made by the filmmaker Christopher Nolan as well. And Christopher Nolan, his auteur traits, or one of his auteur traits, or traits of an auteur, is a shift in alignment throughout the film, and he does this in his Batman films, Dark Knight, and stuff like that. So, in order to understand the film, we have to, at this point for this scene, align with Ariadne, because it's at this scene, the cafe scene, where up to this point we don't really know what's going on. There's been a number of scenes, but making connections to this stage is quite difficult. So in terms of this scene, what Nolan does is he uses this conversation and the cafe scene to tell the audience what the film is about, how to understand the film, how to read the film, how to place the film, and what the audience have already seen within a context. And in turn, that also helps the audience understand the rest of the film. And again, this is a classic auteur trait of Christopher Nolan, um, in the sense that in a lot of Nolan films, he the audience know what Nolan wants them to know, so he doesn't spell the film out in the first act. He will keep giving little drips of information until there's a point within the film where the audience has all the information and then they can enjoy the film. So the audience is very much active, or a very much an active audience throughout Inception, which is one of the geniuses of this film, essentially. So again, if you've not seen Inception, probably a really good film to watch. Um, First and foremost, because it is a great film, and if you're interested in this area of study or taking it further, maybe at university, it's there's been a lot of writing and a lot of study into this film, because Nolan has done a really good job in the audience positioning and the alignment, and in terms of an auteur, it's probably one of his most successful films, if not his most successful film. Okay, so the task here, you should hopefully you're all well on the way with your genre case study, and within your genre and narrative case studies, you can speak about structuralism and semiotics. They can weave throughout both of these key areas. So, in terms of your narrative chapter, again, I've said if you can make it about 750 words, so this case study should be building quite nicely now with quite a lot of detail. And the reason, you can't afford so much so many words to these assignments are because to really understand the theories, you've got to unpack them, and you have to explain why the theories are relevant. Okay, so it's important that you do that. Please don't just write a case study and regurgitate, about the cafe scene in Inception. Don't assume that the person marking it knows what you're on about. So if you're going to talk about this scene, for instance, or any other scene, explain what the scene is about. The more context that you encompass, again, the higher your grade's going to be, because you're showing the person assessing your work that you are engaging with the text on a critical level, and you're thinking about it and you're consuming that text and contextualizing it, which is what this unit's all about, really. So, within your case study, you might explore some different approaches to narrative. So, some of the things I want you to talk about are Todorov's mainstream narratives, okay, secular narratives or circular narratives, and character alignment, okay. So again, you've got your critical theory in terms of Todorov, and then we've got some interesting examples or some interesting subject areas for you to talk about. Okay, so this part of your case study should again be approximately 750 words, and yeah, I'm looking forward to reading your ideas. So make sure you put 100% effort in, guys. This is quite an academic task. So do your best, and like I said, the devil is in the detail. So lots of detail, lots of context, and lots of critical thinking. Have a good weekend, guys, and well done on this week. See you later.